Africa, a land with abundant resources, has a deep history intertwined with different types of metals. For example, we had gold, which was a prized commodity in Africa, which had a lot of influence in a bunch of different trade and empires throughout the African continent. However, it wasn't just gold. Other metals such as copper and iron played a big role in the technological development of the people of the African continent. And so in this video I'm going to be telling you all about that. Now, many different people in Africa used iron, such as the Carthaginians, the Egyptians, the Nubians, the Malian empires, the Songhai empires. Pygmy people even used iron. Iron is pretty much all over Africa right now. But where are its origins? Well, the origins of African iron is kind of a complicated one. Now, universally, historians used to actually attribute the origins of iron working globally to a place called Anatolia, which is in modern day Turkey. And there is a lot of evidence for this place of origin of ironworking in modern day Turkey, which is in modern day Europe, at least for Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. But what about the rest of the African continent? Like everybody below this era? Well, it turns out that African iron in sub-Saharan Africa has its own twist and its own origin. The earliest ironworkers of Africa likely existed somewhere in between the modern day countries of Chad and the Great Lakes region of Eastern Africa. And only in a few places of Africa did the knowledge of ironworking come from the Middle East and not from deeper within the African continent, which would have been North Africa, the Nubian kingdoms of Meroe, and as well as Horn Africa. Now, what's interesting is that ironworking seems to have been present since 500 BC in the modern day countries of Nigeria, Rwanda, Cameroon, and in the East African Great Lakes region, ironworking seems to have been present since at least 1000 BC. What is even more interesting is that ironworking seems to have been very well established in sub-Saharan Africa before it was even established in Egypt or the rest of North Africa. Another thing to note is that there are very significant differences between ironworking that developed in Africa versus that which developed in the Middle East. Just to give you some context, by the time that African iron workers developed furnaces that are able to heat up iron to temperatures that steel would be directly produced through the heating process or during the smelting process, other groups of people such as the Chinese or Europeans did not catch up to this level of production, at least until thousands of years later. With the Europeans, it was 2,000 years later, and for the Chinese, it was actually a couple hundred years later. So it really just shows you and gives you a picture of, or a glimpse of how advanced some of these early African iron workers actually could have been. Different African people and cultures and empires that would have been iron workers, especially who are known for using iron, were actually the Nubian kingdoms of Meroe, which was actually referred to as the Birmingham of Africa due to its vast iron production. The Bantu peoples of Central and West Africa, and the Egyptians, obviously, and of course West African peoples who had the Malian kingdoms and the Songhai kingdoms and the Ghana kingdoms and etc. Now, one of the most interesting works of iron in Africa has to be King Tut's meteoric iron. And I know what you may be wondering, meteoric iron? That's what I said. The weapon was one of a pair of daggers that was discovered by British archaeologists back in 1925. And the origin of this unrusted blade actually baffled scientists when they discovered it. Now, to give it some context, King Tut was mummified over 3,000 years ago. Scientists ran x-rays on this piece of metal, this piece of iron, this dagger that they found from King Tut's tomb, I'm assuming. And they said that the iron was definitely meteoric because of its high percentage of nickel, which I guess is abnormal in iron that's made on this planet. They said that the ancient Egyptians were aware of the rare chunks of iron that would fall from the sky, and I guess that when they would find these chunks of iron that would fall from the sky, they would mold them and shape them into their tools, their middle tools, and create their iron daggers and other advanced weapons that they may have used. The dagger features with decorated gold around it, specifically around the handle. For other groups and people of the African continent who would have spread iron, one notable people would have been the Bantu people, who would actually introduce ironworking to some East African pastoralist populations who were living in Kenya, specifically the early southern Cushitic and Nilotic populations. And if you want to learn more about that, I'll probably leave a sticker or something for my video on the pastoral Neolithic culture if you ever want to find out about that. But all in all, what we can tell is that African ironworking had its own separate origins, separate from Mediterranean and Eurasian world, and that Africans actually were advanced enough to create some ironworking techniques, even more advanced than those had developed in the Eurasian world for a while. And so, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you guys want to learn more from me or to have contact with me and those around me, you should hit the link below in the description, where I run free classes now every Friday. And yeah, if you ever want to show up for one of these free classes, and I'll teach you about a subject maybe that I'm currently learning about or whatever, it'll be a great way for you to connect. You'll be dropped into my Discord server. And yeah, if you like this video, share, thumbs up, subscribe. Share this with someone who might find this interesting, who might be able to critique it. Share this with your history teacher. I don't know, if you're in college, if you're in regular school, I don't know, share this to your high school teacher. Peace out.